TelecomTV, where ICT connects.
Hello, welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martyn Warwick, and I'm reporting from Northern California, from Silicon Valley, and we're at the fourth meeting, the ETSI meeting, ISG, that's the Industry Standardization Group, on NFV. And I'm talking with Lloyd Mayhew of HP. Lloyd, thanks for coming in and thanks for the time. What exactly do you think has been achieved to date in the ISG, and why is this work so important for the industry in general and for service providers in particular?
Well, I think what we're seeing really is the convergence of the IT industry and the telecommunications industry. And there have been some leading service providers, British Telecom, Verizon, and others, have been working with HP for the last 4 or 5 years on some leading, what I'd call leading proof of concepts around things which has led up to NFV. So adapting more IT technology, the IT cost model, but putting it more in the core of the network and so forth. In particular, BT did a lot around packet processing instead of using custom appliances, moving those to IT, and in this case, HP servers. So those, I think, were very successful proof of concepts. And so BT, Verizon got together with, I think, originally 6 and then quickly 12 other service providers. And in order to reduce their costs and to really give themselves a lot more flexibility and get onto the leading technology, they really wanted to adopt the IT technology, and to do this, they formed the NFV group and so forth. So it's been a fantastically successful group. It just had their first, they sort of formed it last September, had their first face-to-face in January. And as you can see from this meeting with well over 350 people in attendance, it's kind of a new wave which is really taking off in the industry. And I think the importance of the ETSI ISG group is that they are really identifying the deltas and what needs to be done so that one can adapt the IT technology and put it into the telecom network. So I think it's very critical. It appears to have come out from nowhere, but in actual fact, there was a lot of groundwork that went on before that in the form of proof of concepts and some very visionary people and some of the service providers.
So given what you've just been saying, what impact will NFV have on the service provider community and their business models? And when do you think the hype will become reality? Because some say the hype is now over.
Yeah, I'm not too sure it's peaked, but I'll take you being the expert in that. I'll take your opinion on that. But I think what we're seeing is how it's going to change service providers is they're separating their hardware from the software and the application. Sure. So, and their vision and where they want to go is they want kind of a common hardware platform, maybe ubiquitous hardware platform, which scales very quickly and easily without having to get custom components in it, and run the software applications on top of that. So what that does is it lowers their operating costs and their CapEx costs as they move to the IT cost model. It gives them an awful lot more flexibility, so they could bring in a new application, a new firewall, a new whatever, deploy it without a huge investment, and have it scale up and down as it's successful in the marketplace and so forth. It also gives service providers a new business model, right? So in the past, it's been largely CapEx on custom appliances. Yes, they had a lot of software, a lot of intellectual property in that. A lot of that is now becoming separated on the software side from the hardware. And I think you'll see in time this is going to enable a lot of additional ISVs, independent software vendors, to play. It's going to enable service providers to sort of pay for the software. They could either buy it as CapEx, right, or they can move to an OpEx model, a usage model. A lot of them see that as a flexibility. So I think in the shorter term, you're seeing the separation of the hardware-software components. Longer term, I think you'll be seeing a lot more players involved, engaged, and you'll see a number of different business models being adopted by the service providers. In particular, one of a more usage model, so that you as a consumer, you as an enterprise may pick certain applications. They may be hot this year or whatever, and it's relatively inexpensive for the service provider to deploy that, have it scale out on a usage model, scale down. So they're going to be able to manage their costs more in line with their revenue, and they're going to lower their costs overall as they move to the IT cost model.
And what are the biggest challenges facing service providers when it comes to adopting NFV, and how do you think they can be overcome?
The initial challenge or work to be done, I think, is to identify the deltas between the telco industry requirements and the IT industry, right? So the telco industry in the past has been and will remain very dependent on NEPs, network equipment providers, traditionally called TEMs, telecommunications equipment providers. And the telco industry has a lot of specific requirements which are different or a bit different than the IT industry. For example, a lot of applications are much more deterministic, right? They're more deterministic. They've got a lot stronger availability requirements on them. They have a lot of regulatory requirements on them. They have requirements about where they can store data and so forth. So they've got performance requirements, they've got latency requirements, they've got regulatory requirements. They've adopted a whole different or a very very successful management or operation system support, business support systems around their infrastructure. As they move to the IT industry, they have to be able to identify those differences and address them, right? And they have to make strategic decisions, for example, whether operation system support, whether they adopt more of an IT cost model, which has the advantages of lower cost, a lot broader portfolio of educated professionals to manage those systems, and then they have their traditional management systems and capabilities, some of which are very large, requiring thousands of people to maintain and so forth. So they've got a lot of, first of all, they need to identify the deltas on the technology, make sure, and people like ourselves at Hewlett-Packard need to make sure that our cloud environments, our server environments can handle the packet processing requirements with the industry standard servers, can manage this in a cloud environment as required, and provide the availability for them that they're expecting. At the same time, the service provider is going to have to work with companies like HP on the manageability of these systems, how one manages, deploys them, and so forth.
What about OSS and BSS? They are in a bit of a mess as they stand at the moment. Will NFV have a good effect on that? Will it change things?
It will. Now, I'm at HP and I'm in the platforms group, so my expertise is really more in the platforms. But with regards to OSS, I think it's going to evolve over time, and it's going to be the long leg on this thing, right? Or on the critical path here. And it depends on the application. So for many applications, I think the service provider would rather go to an IT model for this. When you get more into the actual core of the network and so forth, they've got a lot of custom OSS trouble tickets, a whole huge infrastructure on OSS, right? It's going to be more of a challenge for them, right? And yes, OSS in particular has been very much of a custom application, right, for each service provider, and it's going to stay that way for a while. So I think the IT industry has to learn from the telecommunications industry about what the requirements are, why they have special requirements there, and so forth, and bring our level of the game up. At the same time, the telcos, have got a challenge with the telcos, and the network equipment providers have a challenge there, right? And I personally, me speaking, I personally think that's one of the larger challenges going forward here.
Now, you are involved on the telecom side of HP, the telecoms platform side. What does HP bring to the table as far as NFV is concerned?
So HP has been in the telecommunications industry for 30, 40 years. So, and historically, we've had minus 48 volt system, custom systems for the telco industry. Historically, those systems have been used for the billing systems, OSS, BSS systems, so the management and so forth of those element managers and so forth. And then 15, 20 years ago, started getting more engaged in things like video on demand, video pumps, and that sort of things, running on IT platforms, still by and large minus 48 volt and so forth. There's been quite a change in the last 7, 10 years where a number of core network applications are moving over to industry standard platforms. So we've had to adopt, and the network equipment providers have had to adopt. So we're providing minus 48 volt industry standard systems, which are also fully NEBS and ETSI certified. If Verizon or AT&T have special requirements, we adopt those and so forth. But we're using industry standard servers or standard products. There's no price delta on them. There is a price delta, of course, if you put them in a seismic rack for earthquakes or the minus 48. But in general, the same equipment. So they've been adopting us, right, as that. So that's kind of where we've been historically. We've been very engaged with a number of the service providers on proof of concepts, like I said, with British Telecom and Verizon. And we're working, so when you do NFV, there's a number of different levels for it. So at the basic level, there's packet processing, and you want to be able to do line rate, packet processing, deep packet inspection, and just load balancing, everything else at the packet level. Instead of being on a custom ASIC-based appliances, you want to move those into a cloud environment, and you want to do the things at line rate. So we work with Intel and others on things like Intel's DBDK software to make sure it's optimized in HP's platforms. So at the very low level, we need to make sure that you can do packet processing and so forth. At the very low level, you need to make sure you have high availability platforms. Moving up the NFV, I'll use the word stack here. So if you have that, cloud kind of means you've got ubiquitous hardware that scales up and down. NFV, well, you may have some specialized hardware or software components. So you've got DBDK, which runs on a particular NIC that supports SIROV and has been tuned for packet processing. So how you manage that at the virtualization layer and then how you orchestrate that and so forth, those areas we're working on. So so there's at the lower level as well as all the way up. But in general, it's adding value to the IT industries, in this case, HP's servers and networking products and so forth on that. Also with HP, another thing that's happening is things like OpenFlow, those capabilities are moving to routers and so forth. So a lot of the requirements, when you get kind of a software-defined network and even software-defined data centers, those are areas where HP is taking a leadership role, and we're bringing those to the telecom industry. So there's a convergence, and so we're moving our game up. And telecoms are learning more about the IT industry and how our cost models and how getting on the latest technology will benefit them on a cost basis, as well as bringing new functionality to the marketplace.
Lloyd Mayhew, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
TelecomTV, where ICT connects.